Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. Welcome to my channel. At the present time, Queensland has begun early voting for the Queensland state elections. And I'm prompted to do this video because there are two issues that are very important that we need to understand clearly. Now, the present government in power is the Labor Party, and the head of the Premier is Anastasia Palaszczuk, and she is going to the election promoting that there will be abortion on demand, that's a full-term fetus, and they will also be supporting what they call voluntary assisted dying, which is a nice euphemism for euthanasia. And so she has openly declared this. Anastasia Palaszczuk has declared that this will be part of her features and part of what she's promoting if she is re-elected. In opposition to her, we have the Australian Liberal Party, and in the state of Queensland, the representative of that is Deb Frecklington. Now, while Anastasia Palaszczuk has come forward and said that they are promoting these two platforms, Deb Frecklington, when she was questioned on TV about these two platforms, she made the alluded to the fact that there's been no firm decision made about that subject being represented by the Liberal Party, etc. In other words, she didn't have any starch in her backbone to call it for what it is. You either are supporting it or you're not supporting it. It's one or the other. You're not just going to go with the flow and make a decision halfway through. So let's examine these two platforms. The platform of abortion on demand up to full-term fetus and euthanasia, or voluntary assisted dying, if you want to call it that. Now, I'm a retired nurse, recently retired, and so I do have some inside knowledge particularly on palliative care. So I'm going to address this truthfully. Now, the first thing I want to look at, though, is the abortion on demand up to full-term fetus, live fetus. Now, first of all, why does it take someone so long after they get pregnant to decide right up at full time that they want to abort their child? It's obviously not because of danger to the mother's health, or that would have been done sooner, most likely, if it was the case. There is no requirement for any woman to place her life in mortal danger from the fetus she is carrying, because the fetus is termed to be in pursuit of the mother's life, and therefore it is morally correct to abort that fetus when it is placing the mother's life in danger. No one is questioning that fact at all. But an abortion on demand, for whatever reason, now I can only guess what that might be. Changed your mind? Don't want to have the baby now? Not the right gender? No, you don't want another boy, or I've already got 3 girls. I don't know. Only you know that decision if you're in that position. But to go to full term and then say you're going to have an abortion, and then and the process of an abortion is not, it's not delicate, shall I say. It's pretty gruesome. And then sometimes the fetus survives the abortion and then it's left unassisted to expire. Now, let me just put this in another perspective. If I had a female dog who was pregnant, ready to deliver her puppies, and I took her to the vet because I decided I don't want all those puppies. I can't be bothered with them. I'm going to get rid of them. So I go to the vet aborts them, which a vet probably wouldn't do at that stage, but a vet aborts those puppies and I leave them on the veterinary surgeon's theatre table because some of them survived and they're just going to squeal and not feed them, not do anything, let them die of cold or exposure, or eventually they'll expire. Can you imagine what would happen if that got out into the public? The vet would be run out of town. I would be criticised and ridiculed for cruelty to animals, and rightly so. Rightly so. You wouldn't do that. But can you see where the public outrage about aborting a full-term fetus, a full-term baby, does not seem to be causing an outrage? But if an animal, we would do that with a litter of puppies or kittens, we would have the animal rights people breathing down our neck. We would have all sorts of things happening. So I want you to keep that in your mind, in perspective. All right. Now, let's go back to the original pregnancy. We have any number of preventative things available for women and men, but available for women to prevent pregnancy. In this day and age, it is so easy to come by. I cannot understand why women are still getting pregnant when they don't want to have a baby, when they don't want the responsibility of this infant. They have, what is it? Why is that happening when there are so many devices and medications available now that can prevent you from getting pregnant? No one's been able to answer that for me recently. Someone said it's too expensive. Oh, but it's okay to go and have an abortion at the state hospital. The taxpayer pays for it, but you don't have to. Or you might be able to afford to go to a private doctor. So again, we need to keep everything in perspective. Prevention is better than murder. So we need to understand that aborting a baby, a fetus, for any reason other than it's endangering the mother's life is actually murder. It is actually murder. You can call it whatever you like. Women's rights, I own my body or whatever. Well, hey, you don't. That baby has a share in it too. It has a right to life. Just as you had a right to get pregnant, you made a choice and there's consequences. Hopefully you deliver a nice, healthy, lovely, happy, loved baby. But some of you don't want to do that. And I'm not trying to be harsh on people when I say this. I understand there are extreme circumstances, but the point is you made a choice. You made a choice to enter into some sort of relationship that eventuated in you getting pregnant. And then now suddenly you don't want it. Okay, let's move on. Now, we're going to look at this question of voluntary assisted dying, which is euthanasia. Now, at the present time, we have palliative care units. There is nearly all public hospital, I think every public hospital has some sort of a palliative care unit for the sick and terminally ill, dying. And also there has been made available where people can actually access palliative care in their own home, in the security and environment of their own home, which is wonderful. Now, there are many, many brilliant drugs that are used to control pain, control nausea. The list goes on. These are perfectly applicable drugs for people who are in that palliative stage, particularly when they are in that end stage or terminal part of palliative care. So we're talking about end stage of life. End stage could mean, 3 or less days away. So it's when the person really needs as much assistance to manage their discomfort, if they have any, and to, be able to breathe properly, be able to... death is a very sacred process, a very sacred process. There's a lot more involved than the flesh. And I think, although a lot of people don't understand that and don't want to, I think you should understand that there is a dignity to dying, a dignity to death. And that person will die when it is the right time, when their work on this earth is completed. Their soul will leave the body, they will die. So then we hear stories about families watching their parent, for instance, dying in agony, screaming in agony. They did nothing for them. Well, who's the they? Were they in a hospital or a palliative care unit? Did you advocate for your parent that they were in pain? Please do something. I need to speak to the doctor. There's cause and effect here. So saying that you had to sit and watch your mother or father or relative die in agony, that is not acceptable. It's not acceptable for you to allow it to happen. Why did it happen? Were they at home without assistance? Or were they in a palliative care unit? Were they in a hospital? Whatever the case may be, if they were in pain, and they're regular, that they get medication regularly, particularly when they're on the morphine pumps, etc. And if that's not holding their comfort at an acceptable level, then the dose is altered. The doctor makes arrangements to alter the dose. So everything is in place when you're on proper palliative care, proper palliative management. There are drugs, there are advisors, consultants, you name it, they're available. As a nurse, I can assure you that does happen. Now, if you have advocated for your family member who's in agony, as you are saying, then if they're not doing something about it, then you do need to advocate and jump up and down. Do something about it. Say to the staff or go to the director of the hospital, the CEO or whatever, and say, this is not happening. They should be reported because those nurses and doctors are neglecting the duty of care to their patient. Right, let that sink into the mind. Now, there are people that will say, I've heard these comments, people will say, oh, it took my mother or father so long to die. It went on forever. Was Dad in discomfort? Was Mum in discomfort? Oh, not until the very end, and then he had to go into hospital and, it was just terrible. And I'm sure it was. But allow that person the dignity to die. Dignity in dying. It was an inconvenience for you that it took so long, wasn't it? Perhaps you had to come home from London or something and you thought Dad or Mum would be dead in a couple of days and buried and it would be all fine. Oh, it took forever for them to die. Just the fact that those words come out of people's mouths actually frighten me. So, these points that people raise about it took them so long to die, they died in agony, oh, it was terrible to watch them. Well, who was it terrible for, you or the actual person who was dying? Because when they're in end-stage palliative care, they are usually in a fairly comfortable state. So as a nurse, I question some of these statements that people make. I did not come down in the last shower, and I have done my share of nursing, and including palliative care nursing. I know how the system works. I have seen relatives say, I thought he'd be gone by lunchtime, but he's still here. Oh, I'm going to have to go. You know, this isn't waiting for a hairdressing appointment or something. So sometimes the relatives are the problem, not the dying individual who deserves all respect and care that can be provided for them. So if you don't like what you're hearing, then these are the facts. These are the facts. So we have to also look at the economic side of this debate or this promotion that the government's bringing in. Of course, we do need more money invested in palliative care, especially end-stage palliative care, perhaps extend the size of some units and extend more care to be available for people at home, etc. I don't deny that. We do need more. Those who wish to go into a unit can always get into a unit. Those who want to stay at home and spend their last days, that should be available too, and the same care should be available. So my point is we certainly need, either government, no matter who gets in, needs to invest some more money in that and update or increase staffing, etc. Now, bear in mind, of course, caring for the dying is very expensive. Costs a lot of money. These people were taxpayers. They deserve it. It's a dignity they deserve to be well cared for. But, it costs a lot of money. As does, for instance, if I may hark back to a child that is born to bad parents or parents who can't look after them or whatever, it costs a lot of money to rear that child too. Costs a lot of money. So we're starting to see a price tag, an expense account against abortion and euthanasia. So I want you to think clearly about this, people, before you vote. Think clearly. I'm giving you the hard, cold facts and you need to hear them because no politician's going to tell you the truth about it. And some of the reports that you're going to hear from people who's had someone die of some dreadful illness or they're in end-stage palliative care are not always accurately portrayed or were not always handled the correct way. Because believe it or not, from a nurse's point of view, that patient is your main focus, and you can get some pretty nasty family. They can be fighting over the house before mum or dad's dead. It's ugly at times. So we've now got firmly in our mind about the expense, about the facts, what really happens with an abortion, what really happens with euthanasia, what really happens with good palliative care that is provided. So let us go back to our first two questions, the first two dilemmas, the first two presentations of abortion up to full term on demand, no questions asked, over and done with. Voluntary assisted dying. Who can honestly say that is going to be a foolproof mechanism where someone can make a decision that they no longer want to live and it be abided by? Well, first of all, I have two problems with that. Death is the domain of God. You are on this earth for a reason. You have a purpose and something to fulfill. There's a reason for you to be here. God will take you when he is ready, not when you or your family think you're ready, because whether you believe in God or not, or whether you have any moral integrity or not, one day you are going to have to answer for the choices and decisions you made in life. It will happen. So think very carefully about these things. So those two topics are euthanasia and full-term abortion on demand are immoral. They are both murder. And I can't help but feel there's some economic factors perhaps riding on that as well. Some vested interests. I want you to think long and hard about this. And I know you're not going to be happy with what I'm saying, but you know what? I'm telling you the truth. We need to be very careful. The first thing I would say is that we examine we examine all the political parties in Queensland at the moment, but especially the two major ones, that being the Labor Party and the Liberals. At least Anastasia Palaszczuk had the honesty and the backbone to come out and say that's what they're doing. Abortion on demand, voluntary assisted dying. On the other hand, we have Deb Frecklington, who's going to sit on the bench, not going to say anything. I personally find that more dangerous than anything. I don't agree with what either of the politicians have done. Quite frankly, neither of those people are particularly bright individuals to begin with. However, it is what it is. We have what we have. So when you go to the polls, when you go to vote, you need to vote very carefully after absorbing all this information. And politicians they need to be honest with us. And so far, Deb Frecklington has not been giving us open and full disclosure on these two issues, and that is a big concern for me. Is she going to run with the hare and hunt with the hound? I don't know. It's hard to say. But you've got to, these politicians are making platforms that they think will attract the voter. They have to act upon those and have to deliver, whether we agree with it or not. They have to uphold what they say they're going to do. But I do say this for Deb Frecklington, not making a call on this issue of euthanasia and full-term abortion is not going to go in her favour, because I'm just one person that has a concern. There must be many others out there with the same concern. So we need to know what we're voting for, or we have to do the unthinkable and vote informal. Don't, just turn up and tick your name off the list, and I don't think that's the right thing to do either. But the bottom line is, what are we going to do? Voters who have some integrity and principles, what and who are we going to vote for? What are they offering? And at the moment, I feel like we're hanging. It's a bit like being inside a pinata, waiting to get hit from something. So in closing, I would like to just say that those voters out there that have principles and moral integrity, etc., please ask questions and decide who you're going to vote for. And just remember this, that a society that advocates or enables full-term abortion and euthanasia is a godless society. And that state, be it the state of Queensland or wherever, is in a state, literally, of moral decay. So Queenslanders, we need to be careful how we vote, because voting for full-term abortion on demand and for euthanasia or voluntary assisted dying is a slippery slope, and It's a slippery slope that caters to people's impulses and choices and not making them be responsible for those choices. The government's picking up the tab, particularly when it comes to full-term abortion. And in the meantime, you need to ask people, the politicians, what they're going to do about improving the palliative care units and palliative care services available so that we don't have to face this situation again. I hope this has been some help to you, but ask questions and there's always more than meets the eye. Please take care and God bless.